Coming up on tonight's UAP News Show, the Eglin Air Force Base FOIA response, SALT conference speakers announced, Michael versus Nathan, where does the truth lie? Alex Dietrich's take on the recent NYC UFO, another new unhidden ambassador, and the upcoming SCU conference. Hey there, beautiful souls. It's your girl, Allie, and we're back at it again for another episode of UAP Society's weekly UAP and UFO news show. And I'm stoked to get started. I'm riding solo today as we did a recording error the first time we recorded this show, so this is going to be take 2 for me. Up first, the Eglin Air Force Base FOIA response. This week, the Eglin Air Force Base UAP sighting that happened back in January of 2023 was a hot topic due to a recent FOIA request response. In short, it says that a video from that event exists, but that they won't release it. The reason this is turning heads is because in the last report that Aero made, they flat out said that there was no video evidence due to equipment failure. But now they're changing their tune. So what's really going on? To learn more about this story and to take a deeper dive into the details of this case, let's take a look at a video Chris Lato dropped this week on Lato Files, explaining all of this in detail.
This is a recent tweet from Lou Elizondo. Exactly right, Ross. No video exists and nothing to see here, folks. Well, okay, actually, there is a video, but we can't release it because it's too sensitive of an event that wasn't sensitive. What type of logic is that? If we look at Ross Coulthart's tweet, this DoD Aero Freedom of Information Act response acknowledges a video does exist from the January 2023 Eglin Air Force Base UAP sighting, but refuses to release it. But someone's not being truthful because DoD Aero officially claimed in its report that there was no video because the jet recorder was not working. And if this object was just a balloon, why is it a national security secret? So this is the actual FOIA request. The responsive video you're requesting is not releasable to you in accordance with 5 USC exemption. Protects from disclosure information about matters specifically authorized under criteria established by an executive order to be kept secret in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. According to an article by Mark von Rennenkamp, the Pentagon is lying about UFOs. Congress held a historic hearing on UFOs July 26, 2023. If you remember, he had 2 former Navy fighter pilots, Ryan Graves and David Fravor, also with David Grush, relaying their events with direct visual confirmation of UAPs and amazing capabilities from these objects in an amazing exchange with Representative Matt Gaetz. I've covered a couple times on this channel. Gaetz described how he received a protected disclosure from pilot at Eglin Air Force Base, a major there, regarding a January 2023 UFO incident over the Gulf of Mexico. He was stonewalled by the Air Force and asked a House Oversight Subcommittee to subpoena radar data and images from the UFO encounter. In the hearing, Gaetz said from the images he saw of the object, he was not able to attach to any human capability, either from the United States or any of our adversaries, and he had worked on the Armed Services Committee for 7 years. So he had some experience with this topic. His office received a protective disclosure of a UAP encounter off the coast of Florida from Eglin Air Force Base. He traveled to Northwest Florida with Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett and Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, where they asked to meet with the pilots and see any images and radar data from the incident. He says, "We are not afforded access to all of the flight crew, and initially, we were not afforded access to images and to radar. Thereafter, we had a bit of a discussion about how authorities flow in the United States of America. And we did see the image, and we did meet with one member of the flight crew who took the image." Gaetz said the pilot told him they were doing a test flight over the Gulf of Mexico on a clear day when 4 objects were identified on radar flying in a diamond formation. Gaetz said he's personally seen the radar data from the incident. One of the pilots goes to check out that diamond formation and sees a large floating, what I can only describe as an orb, he said. And again, not have any human capability that I'm aware of. And when the pilot approached, he said his radar went down. He said that his FLIR infrared camera system malfunctioned and he had to manually take this image from one of the lenses. Gaetz also said that the pilot told him explicitly that reporting UAP incidents is discouraged. He said, "It was stated explicitly to me by these test pilots that if you have a UAP experience, the best thing you can do for your career is forget it and not tell anyone, because any type of reporting, either above the surface or below the surface, does have a perceived consequence for these people. And that is a culture we must change if we want to get to the truth. So from AARO's released report, this is pilot's drawing of the reported object. You can see gunmetal gray here, gray on the bottom, and then it said as an orange, reddish, looked like some sort of engine attached to the side. It said blurry air was underneath, so blurry air but no smoke. This is, I'm guessing, the two images. One image off the FLIR, off the electro-optical IR system, is here. And then this coming straight off looks like the targeting pod image to me. AARO's response is that it is one of these, a commercial light-all, commercial lighting balloon. 4 of them in some perfect diamond formation released. According to Mark von Rennenkamp, in his article titled "The Pentagon is Lying About UFOs," this so-called explanation of a large commercial lighting balloon insults the intelligence of any reader who takes a few moments to review the details of the incident. It did not convince the world's most prominent UFO skeptic. The pilot's sketch of the object, described as akin to an Apollo spacecraft, bears no plausible resemblance to the design of any known industrial lighting balloon. That would be from Mick West. This Eglin UFO looks like a white sphere wearing a hat. The image on the left is the IR thermal image, adjusting the levels only. It shows a quite irregular hat, which is not really consistent with the lighting balloon hypothesis. Mark von Rennenkamp called the Florida-based company that produces the high-end commercial lighting balloons alluded to by the UFO office, AARO. According to the firm, it is unheard of that such industrial-grade tethered balloons would spontaneously float away. Unheard of. In a brief video, Emmy-winning lighting designer Matt Ford, who has used the lighting balloons in question, detailed the sheer absurdity of the Pentagon's explanation. It gets more interesting because Mark von Rennenkamp reports that there were 80 knots of wind at altitude that day. So 80 knots of wind. How are these objects able to hold stationary? As Ryan Graves reported off the East Coast, these objects are able to hold stationary in hurricane-class winds. That's just impossible. Gates has stated that the Pentagon's assessment is incomplete and does not reflect all of the data I was shown. He also called for the public release of the images and radar data associated with the encounter. And this was from Mick West. With the new Eglin UFO, the fact that it had no airspeed recorded means that it's impossible to rule out that it was just a balloon or 4 balloons. It might also be an alien spaceship, but I'd put balloon at number 1 with the current data. So this is from the AARO report. UAP-1 operated at an altitude of about 16,000 feet above ground level. The second and third UAPs were noted at altitudes of 17,000 to 18,000 feet. The fourth was lost from radar and no altitude was noted. Moreover, no airspeeds were noted for any of the UAP in this report. So these are experienced pilots, actually, and seeing 4 of these commercial lighting balloons supposedly in a diamond formation in 80 knots of winds just seems impossible to me, especially if they're holding stationary. If we look here, what is the blurry air underneath with no smoke? What is that from? According to AARO, it's earthshine is what they call it. Just seems ridiculous to me.
So as you saw in that video, Ross Coulthard posted a tweet about Eglin that Lou Elizondo replied to, but we have another reply in that thread from Gary Nolan, who had this to say. It's another example of asymmetry being applied. Skeptics demand proof and methods from claimants, but the DoD gets to give conclusions and no data. The DoD also gets to veto the claimant's ability to provide verified data. Rules for thee, but not for me. That's not how science is done. Also in that video, Chris mentions Mark von Rennenkamp and the article that he wrote called "The Pentagon is Lying About UFOs." Well, to expand on that even more, here's a tweet from Mark with an interesting point to consider. The Eglin UAP plot thickens. A UAP sighting posted in 2019, appears to match key characteristics of the Eglin UAP from 2023, down to an orange-reddish rectangle and blurry or fuzzy air around the object. What do you think? And here's 2 more tweets that'll give you something to mentally munch on. Ronik P says, recent triangular UAP sighting near Hulbert Field, Florida, close to Eglin Air Force Base. 3 military witnesses observed a silent, triangle-shaped craft hovering at about 8,000 feet with dim lights. Hobart Field security forces were alerted. The object's size was reported to exceed that of a commercial Airbus. From the report, quote, notably, the speed at which it moved suggested capabilities beyond those of traditional aircraft, end quote. Seems like further investigation is warranted here. So what do you think of those two events? Are they related? What about this next idea? Rayfos Networks points out that from DeSanti Centauri's Alien Race book, this seems awfully similar to the 1933 Italian crash retrieval disclosed/brought up again by David Grush. And the ship next to the data looks like recent Eglin sightings. So what do you guys think? What do you think of how AARO is handling business? Are they giving nothing to see here, move along vibes? Do you think we'll ever lay our eyes on the video in question? Do you think the Eglin sighting has similarities to the 1933 Italian UFO crash and or the 2019 UFO sighting in Florida? Were the UAPs in question really just professional lighting balloons? Let us know in the comments section below. Next up, SALT conference speakers announced. Another story that's got a buzz behind it this week is the upcoming SALT conference and the recent release of the speakers' names. Names such as David Grush, Dr. Mark Esper, and General Mark Milley. If you're unfamiliar with SALT or curious why this is such a big deal, let's take a look at a tweet from Lester Nair. Lester Nair tweets, "Whether we like it or not, part of the next chapter of the UAP story will be the entrance of finance and big tech industries into the fight over materials, breakthrough research, and intellectual property. The SALT conference is set up to foster connection between investors, asset managers, and founders globally. SALT was founded by Anthony Scaramucci, who has been in wealth management and global finance for 40 years. He has not only been openly curious, somewhat, but he's also actively taking steps to try and introduce the UAP topic as a legitimate arena for discussion for capital allocators and innovators." And in this tweet from Anthony Scaramucci, he says, "I want to thank Gary Nolan for coming to SALT conference in May here in NYC to provide our delegates with a briefing in the UAP UFO situation before the Congress had the opportunity. As we unravel the truth, we need to have faith in ourselves and our fellow Americans." Lester goes on to say, "Gary P. Nolan's talk last year is the most watched video on their YouTube channel with 619K views." Then he goes on to say, "Grush being given the opportunity to talk about NHI at SALT will be the first time the subject will be discussed by a former government official at a global finance and tech conference of this scale, to my knowledge. Scaramucci would not have greenlit this without thinking very hard about it. The reputational risk is material. While the guest speakers are a big center point, the biggest benefit to these events usually comes from the networking opportunities." Then he goes on to say, "Names like BlackRock, Apollo, Goldman, IMF, even sovereigns like the UAE will have their Minister of Economy in attendance. I bring all this up to say it's a big deal to have Grush be a main stage speaker at an event like this. This continues to expand the audience of people becoming aware of the state of play. It does also make me think, to what end though? For example, for Gary P. Nolan to be able to fund the work he wants to do for things like the Stardust Repository or Copernicus, he needs investors. So it would make sense for him to want to attend an event like this for the possibility to connect with future backers. These are multi-million-dollar programs. It is not clear to me what the end game is for Grush giving this talk, but he is choosing to do so with the backup of his effective silence otherwise. The only thing I could speculate is a strategic change to fight money and power with money and power, and to try to set up a Kona Blue-like UAP study program in the private sector with big institutional players outside of the military-industrial complex. I just can't imagine what else would require the need to go to that level of private capital. These are not folks who write small checks for pet projects. Kona Blue was looking for $87 million for 3 years. Not that many players can write checks that size. Regardless of whether that is ultimately the direction Grush is trying to go or not, the point is someone will. Especially if you're about to introduce this to a room full of people who have big enough war chests to do something about it. Watch this space." Then it goes on to show a tweet from UAP James saying that David Grush will discuss non-human intelligence and Earth during a speaking engagement at the SALT conference in New York City on May 21st. And this was tweeted on May 3rd, 2024. What sucks is that shortly after we learned that David Grush was due to speak at this event and everyone was super excited to hear from him again, we get hit with this tweet from Tom Thompson that says, Dave Grush will not be attending the SALT conference due to a scheduling conflict from a very reliable private source. Just wanted to let everyone know in case you were worried about why he dropped out. Wah, wah, wah. But before you get too sad, there's still this to consider. Christopher Melancholy says, this Reddit post makes an interesting point. It is pretty remarkable that these people are all presenting at the same conference. The whistleblower who says U.S. military is in possession of NHI crafts and bodies is presenting at the same conference as former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper and former Chairman of Joint Chiefs Mark Milley. Let that sink in. If you're wondering what the connection is between General Mark Milley and the UFO subject, let's take a look at this refresher video from Dan Warren and look at a clip from when Milley spoke at Norwich College graduation ceremony back in 2016.
This is General Mark Milley, an Ivy League educated Army general who's currently serving as the chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And when the Washington Post recently asked the general for his thoughts on the ongoing UFO discussion, he said, "There is a lot of unexplained aerial phenomena out there, and that some UFO sightings by military personnel are difficult to explain." Now, where have I heard that phrase before? General Milley also stated that some of these UFO sightings are really kind of weird and unexplainable. But he balanced out those comments by stating that most sightings can be explained away by a variety of things, like balloons. But as James Fox recently said on Minds podcast,
the vast majority of these things have a prosaic explanation. We don't give a shit about those ones.
So just like the 12,618 cases that Project Blue Book investigated, we only care about the 701 that they were unable to explain. And just like today, we don't care about the hundreds of cases that AARO has been able to make someone else's problem. We only care about the small percentage of cases that they can't explain, including the metallic spherical objects that the military has admitted to witnessing all over the globe.
This is a typical example of the thing that we see most of. We see these all over the world, and we see these in making very interesting apparent maneuvers.
And when General Milley was asked about David Grush's UFO crash retrieval and reverse engineering claims, he stated that he was not going to doubt his testimony, but that he has not seen anything that would suggest that the U.S. has in fact recovered any sort of vehicle that is not man-made or made here on Earth, or that there's any kind of remains. In this article, we learned that as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he had been briefed multiple times by the Pentagon's UAP Investigation Office. And I have to assume that he's talking about AARO or its predecessor, AIMSOG. Now, this is when reading between the lines gets very interesting. And I readily admit that what I'm about to say is speculation on my part. But did you notice that General Milley didn't say that he was briefed on David Grush's claims by AARO? So it sounds like he heard about them through the same channels that we did. However, to give Dr. Kirkpatrick the benefit of the doubt, if he didn't find Grush's information and leads credible and urgent enough to follow up on, then he probably wouldn't have felt inclined to bring them to the attention of the highest ranking officer in the Pentagon. While General Milley, who spent his career rising through the ranks of the Army, was apparently not privy to the same information as Grush was. And are AIMSOG and AARO complicit in preventing high-ranking military officials that are not affiliated with the Air Force from learning the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, of the DoD's full body of knowledge of UFOs and related special access programs? If this is the case, then what could be the origin of the chasm between the Air Force and General Milley's Army as far as UFOs go?
If the world of 1916 was complex, or the world of 1945 was complex, the world of 2016 is intensely complex. And I can tell you that from personal experience, and I know there's many others who can tell you that as well. And you will graduate and be in that world, and you're going to be leading the soldiers and the sailors, the airmen and the Marines in that world. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics, and you'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously. And for that, you're going to have to be ready.
Interesting, right? Little green man, I don't know. Maybe he knows something. Looking at the SALT conference lineup, former chairman of Joint Chiefs General Milley will be leading a discussion called New World Disorder. And former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper will be leading a discussion called Evaluating Threats to America, Foreign and Domestic. So I don't know about you guys, but I was like really happy when I heard that we would be hearing from David Grush, especially at a conference of this magnitude. And then I was equally disappointed when I learned that he wasn't going to be able to attend due to a scheduling issue. Now, honestly, I don't understand the scheduling thing. You would think that they would have known about whatever's keeping him from being able to be there beforehand, like when they booked him to be there. But I don't know, sometimes things pop up and last minute stuff happens. So I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying that I wish he would be able to speak at this conference because it would do a lot of good for the community. Also, I think it's cool that Gary Nolan's video from last year's SALT conference is like their most watched video on their YouTube channel. So it just goes to show that people are really paying attention to this subject. And if you'd like to check out the links to their website, all of that is down in the video description box below. So make sure to peep that. Next up, Michael versus Nathan. Where does the truth lie? Ding, ding, ding. We have another he said going on. This week, Michael Herrera went on podcast UFO live shows with Martin Willis to discuss his 2009 UFO sighting in Indonesia while serving in the Marines. And simultaneously, on that same day, his team leader, Nathan, went on Vetted and spoke to Patrick about his version of the story. And let's just say they don't line up. Michael's saying one thing, and Nathan is basically saying the total opposite. Most of us are already familiar with Michael Herrera's version of the story from when he shared it at Dr. Stephen Greer's National Press Conference last June. But in case you can't remember it, or if you've never heard of this before and this is all new to you, let's watch a video to get you caught up to speed and to hear Nathan's side of the story that he's sharing now for the first time.
Who is Michael Herrera? Today we'll learn the story of an ex-Marine who claims to have had an out-of-this-world experience that would shock even the most open-minded. It involves a UFO, Marines, private military units, psychic human trafficking, and potentially reversed alien technology, all wrapped up in a bow of a good old-fashioned global cover-up. Now, I think it's time we heard from Nathan. And just to recap, Nathan is Michael's former team leader in the Marines. He was with Michael on the humanitarian mission in 2009, the same mission Michael claims he had his UFO encounter on. Except Nathan claims it never happened. And remember, Nathan has never told his side of the story and has never done an interview until now. Do you remember meeting Michael Herrera, like the first time you ever met him, or?
I don't remember if I knew him. So this is a kind of a unique part of it is we went to boot camp in the School of Infantry around the same time. I don't remember if I knew him there, but my first recollection of meeting him, he got brought over to our company and he put in our platoon and he was given to me. It was a weird situation because we just got back from our first deployment, and in the Marine Infantry, like your first year, your first deployment, it's terrible, and then it's kind of like a tradition. So he shows up, and my recollection is he went UA. Basically, he just ran away. Didn't go on the first deployment, right? So when he came to me, I had to treat him like he was the brand new guy with all the other brand new guys. So it was a weird situation because he'd be like, oh, Nathan, oh, what's up? And I'm like, nope, you're getting treated like everyone else. So that's how I first met him.
When you're first introduced to Michael, he's already had this history of missing a deployment. Mm-hmm. And he's showing up wanting to kind of be treated like, I'm not a new guy, I've been around the block. But you're like, you actually haven't been on a deployment, so you're technically new, right? Essentially.
Yeah, that's just how it works. Like, also, no one's going to look favorably on you if you ran away from a deployment. So you show up to me, and it's like, great, now I have the problem child. And he wants to, and he thinks we're buddies because at one point we were in the same peer group. So it was a weird thing.
Your humanitarian day trip out, you were not with Michael.
No, I was, yeah.
Oh, you were with Michael. So you went with Michael out for this aid mission.
Yeah.
Okay, so So the same mission that he says he encountered this UFO, you were with him, and that did, and according to your recollection, that did not happen.
It did not happen. It did not happen because I took the photo of my two guys, my fire team, on the helicopter going in to the humanitarian aid. He's right there. He's in the photo. There's no
Michael
weapon.
says that's not him.
Well, I know that would be a problem, wouldn't it?
Okay, so Michael is claiming that he was not, that's not him in the photo, and that he got approached, I guess, separately at night or something to go on this separate mission. Have you ever heard of anything like that happening?
No, no, that didn't happen because he's the lowest of the low at this point. He's the newest guy there. No one's going to him for any special hookup. You don't get hooked up. It's not it, and it just wouldn't happen. I'm his team leader. Like, it's just,
you know where he is at all times. What's going on?
I have to. No one goes to the lowest guy and is like, "Hey, come here. You want to do something?" No, you got squad leaders, platoon sergeants, platoon commanders, company gunny. It doesn't work like that.
Because Michael's story is that he went out with 6 total. So him and 5 other guys on this chopper. First of all, can you have a chopper that fits that many people? Like 6 plus pilots and everybody else? Okay. Okay. So that is, at least that's possible. But you're right. In that photo, it doesn't show any guns, anything, because you guys are going for humanitarian aid. So
yeah, that's another thing people get stuck up on is weapons, right? He said we have weapons. So we went in, best of my recollection, we went in day 2, right? By this time when we went in, we had already been told you are not bringing rifles. You're not bringing weapons because that looks bad. Everyone's taking photos. And why does a guy have an M16 taking a knee in front of a bunch of locals that need shovels? It just doesn't look good. So what I remember was, I think it was, grapevine, rumor stuff. Some Air Force colonel in charge of stuff said, get back on, don't bring that crap back. And it kind of fits. I've seen photos of the 9th where they have weapons or combat load. And I recognize one of the guys, he was a different platoon. It makes sense. They went in the first day. Day 2 comes around. My platoon goes in. By this time, there's no rifles.
Is there any moments where maybe you fly and you don't keep, like, you have a gun but you're not, like, where if you're flying with the gun, you have to hold the gun? It's not like you can put it in cases somewhere else or something.
That's another thing I've said to people is, like, if I had a weapon, you would see it in every photo. There is not a chance in hell that weapon is coming off my body. It is just not happening. Oh, I'm just going to leave a rifle in the jungle? Oh my God. Like, if someone in the military is listening, they know it's not happening.
You don't do that. Yeah, you don't do that.
And that's,
so it's a strap. The gun has a strap. Essentially,
you have it on a sling. Yeah, you try to be on your back. If you're like doing work, you just sling it on your back. Another thing that most people find ridiculous as well is we didn't have radios. That's what I heard him say. We did not have radios. You're never going anywhere without a radio. You think they're dropping Marines to walk into a jungle with no radios? I've been in plenty of jungles. You get lost in like 30 feet. You're not coming back. It's a non-starter. What are they? They went 300 meters away to a hilltop for security?
Correct.
Okay, you can't see 30 feet in the jungle. Why are you going to go 300 yards away to protect an LZ? You would stay there. And you're for sure not going to go out there without radios. And I didn't know he said it was at night. That's even, if he did, that's even more wild. Like, how are you getting out there? Your GPS they gave you for this particular mission? Like, try and navigate at night in the jungle?
The reason why I know how big this thing was because...
Did you see it as you crested the hill?
Yes, I did. And that's where I took videos and pictures of this thing. That's how I was able to see it because, taking pictures of the chaos going behind and everything. You see in the rubble, burning buildings, flooding and all that kind of stuff. And then you turn around and I'm like...
So you crest this hill.
Yep.
You look down into the valley.
Yep.
And there's a clearing.
There's a clearing
with a UAP.
Yes.
Just sitting there.
Sitting there,
hovering.
rotating clockwise. Yep. And that's in transition this color spectrum I was telling you too.
I think I've heard too, like, well, they were chosen later that night to go on this secret mission. You know, it's like, well, wait a second, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, it just builds up the like deniability. Like, oh, Nathan doesn't know because he wasn't selected for the special mission. You were the lowest guy that ran away. You're the guy. Okay. There's no big event. I never thought about the guy until someone started sending me a link to I think it was the Sean Ryan show. I was like, what is going on? Because I've watched the Sean Ryan show with other people. It's like, dude, I'm not looking at the same dude. This is not. And I watched the episode. I was like, this is insane. I was there with him. This is insane. Like the next day, I emailed the Sean Ryan show. I found an email address. I sent a bunch of photos in. I put 3-4 paragraphs because I was kind of upset. I was like, yo, how does this guy get on here? This huge platform. Did you do zero research? Like nothing. You're just like, screw it. Come on, say it. Because I was like, I like this guy. I like the show. But you let him on. So I never got a response. And then I got a wife. I got kids. I'm not going to put a ton of time into it because I was there and I know. For me, it's easy. This is an easy story because I was there. But I get why everyone else is like going to these extremes because, you got him saying one thing, you got me saying one thing. But common sense and photos and all accounts back me up. No aliens. Sorry, I wish.
And all of a sudden, we were involved by this military force I still to this day don't know who they are. And
How close did you get?
To the craft?
To the craft.
Roughly 200 meters, 150, 200.
Did you get to the bottom of the hill?
Yes.
So you could see, you saw the top of it, and then you could see underneath of it.
And underneath of it had this platform that was on the ground that was separate from this craft hovering. And it was very weird to see, and I was like, okay, I don't know if that's kind of like a cement pad or something. I don't know if it was like a helo pad or anything like that at first, but then started seeing how the material kind of looked very similar to what the craft was. It's like, well, that's separate. So you have something that's on the ground, stationary, and then you have something that's up top and it's just rotating in a clockwise position. So right when we got close to it, at least 150, 200 meters out, then all of a sudden we were engaged, at least not in a hostile manner, at least, not gunfire or firefight or anything like that. But the way that these guys moved was so fluid, it was so still, it was very, very, very smooth. And it kind of indicated to me, after thinking about it for several years, is that these guys have done it for a while because of how smooth this operation was. Mm-hmm. So when we were in a tactical column going towards the center of this thing, they actually came from the flanks, but it was more of a diagonal, like a corner of the room, so to speak, right? For them, at a tactical advantage, they have interlocking fields of fire on every single person, and they had a team of 8, right? And the gear that they had was black OTV vests. They had black camouflage utilities.
So what you're saying is there would have been no they were professionals.
Yes,
there would have been no Mexican standoff where
No.
if they fired, they're shooting into their other squad. They had perfect angles.
Yes, they did.
To where both sides could engage you.
Yes. Team of 4, team of 4. So it was like a fire team element.
Without worrying about a blue on blue situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Did he ever talk about like aliens or UFOs back then, or that you
Nah,
remember anyway? Yeah.
I mean, maybe he did. I was just like, okay, cool.
Sure.
I wish he was right. I wish I was on this night mission that saw some UFOs. Unfortunately not.
So you're open to the ideas in general, just as a person, right?
Oh yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I got no dog in this fight of aliens aren't real. What?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Totally. I wasn't there seeing aliens with Herrera. I don't discount everyone off the bat or anything. I think the stuff's interesting, but I just call bullshit out when someone's bullshitting. Cause then I say people, oh, he's an American hero. He's come on, dog. You're lying. You're just a liar.
Have you ever even heard, period, let's forget Michael for a minute. Have you ever heard of anything within the military during your time of something like this? Secret missions, UFOs, anything? Has there ever been anything that was suspicious to you at all?
No.
Nothing.
There's too much going on, real stuff.
Yeah, real shit.
Real shit. I was doing real shit.
Shit.
I mean,
yeah.
And I'm not gonna say, government shady. I'm sure there's wild shit going on all the time. It just wasn't that day.
A day later, This comment was added to Podcast UFO live show comment section. Important note from Michael Herrera. Thank you again for having us on your show. It was good to link up with Jonathan in the process. A few things I need to address. It's regarding the vetted podcast which interviewed Nathan. He was a team leader at one point, not during the mission I was on. As I stated in numerous emails that the sticks we were on were composed of Marines from different squads, platoons, etc. I was attached to the ship as food service, hence why we were split up abnormally. The statements made during Nathan's interview, which was speaking about me seeing aliens and the operation being at night, were not things I've stated in any interview or podcast I've ever done, including my testimony to government agencies. The inaccurate information they are providing is not anything that I've ever stated. Both of the gentlemen haven't seen any interview I've done in detail, let alone the photo they provided was not me as well. 3 of us have proven it wasn't, and we know the actual Marine they are trying to allege was me. As I stated, I will never release the other names of the other Marines who were with me due to them telling me not to, and I don't want them subjected to the same treatments I have received from all avenues. This is an attempt from somebody who personally disliked me from the beginning and has learned of my successes as an entrepreneur over the years since I was the lone wolf, or the guy who would never make it, so to speak. There have been numerous people who've spoken to Nathan about the details of which he could not recall. I'm not bothered by this, and I could care less on what others think and say. They don't know me personally, and they have no impact on my life whatsoever. They aren't on a level I'm on, or even close in life, and the only people I value the opinions of are those in my circle. Thank you, Martin, once again. So it's just so crazy how there's always so much turmoil in the UFO community. It's like, who can you trust and for how long? Because it seems like every 5 minutes, there's some new conflict of interest going on. Now, Nathan doesn't deny that the government could be involved in some super sneaky alien activity, but he is denying that Michael Herrera had that UFO experience while on his team in Indonesia in 2009. So whose story do you most align with? Who do you think is telling the truth? Is it one or the other? Or is it pieces of both somehow combining to make a different story that is the version of the truth we need to know about? Let us know in the comment section below. Alex Dietrich's take on the NYC UFO. A few weeks ago, we covered a story that we called Was a UFO Seen Over LaGuardia Airport in NYC, in which passenger Michelle Reyes was recording a video of the NYC skyline over JFK when a UAP zips quickly through the frame. Well, this week, News Nation's back at it again, but this time they brought on retired U.S. Navy pilot and Nimitz Tic Tac UFO witness Alex Dietrich to get her take on it. Let's check that out now.
It's been a little over a month since an airline passenger named Michelle Reyes was flying over Manhattan and shooting the skyline with her cell phone, which is what we all do. But something zipped past her window at an extremely high rate of speed. And no matter how many times she watched that video or how many people she shared it with, no one could say what that something was. For that, I turned to retired U.S. Navy Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich. Lieutenant Commander Dietrich was a pilot training with the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group when she was sent to investigate that Tic Tac UFO in 2004. And then the commander saw it for herself. Thank you so much for joining me. I have been dying to talk to you about this. I wanted to get your whole take on what Michelle Reyes saw out the airplane window.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for covering this topic with a serious tone. I know that when we talk about UFOs, a lot of people can snicker or, play the spooky music, and there's a stigma around it. But really, here we are 20 years after we had our encounter off the west coast of California and the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group in the middle of military training operations. And we are similarly shrugging our shoulders and saying, what is this? And where did it come from? What sort of technology is this? And is it a friend or foe? So it's very hard to tell from Ms. Reyes's video what it might be. The problem with cell phone cameras is the resolution just isn't that good. And it's such a short clip, it's hard to analyze. So, something that I've been speaking to or trying to advocate for is that we invest in the hardware and the sensors to capture better footage and then bring to bear all the technology that we have available in order to analyze it and make sense of it.
I'm with you. The only thing is that from me, and I'm nowhere near as skilled as you are, it seems like it's so much better resolution than the radar showed. Like all of a sudden I can see that thing and it's shiny. But I wanted to ask you about 20 years ago, how you were treated when you and your fellow naval pilot in the cockpit reported what you saw. And do you think is any different now? Are we getting better and more serious, again, with our tone and attitude to trying to get to some answers?
Right. Well, there were actually 4 people at the time. There were 2 aircraft, and each aircraft had a pilot and a weapons systems officer. So we had 4 folks with eyes on, and then we had the separate aircraft and crew, so 6 folks, and they were the ones who got the FLIR footage, and that's the forward-looking infrared, and that's why it's so grainy and not very good quality, because you're actually looking at a thermal image there. It's not a camera in the traditional sense. So as far as our reception in 2004, again, we were in a military training exercise off the coast of California relatively soon after the events of 9/11. And so folks were concerned. We were concerned that we couldn't identify it, that we couldn't say whether it was a friend or foe, if it was an adversary, whether it was somebody spying on us with surveillance. And so that was concerning at the time, and we didn't hesitate to report. Of course, we received some good-natured ribbing in the aftermath, jokes of little green men and all that. But, in the years since, 2 decades now, we have made slow but steady progress towards trying to come up with a systematic way to report these incidents. When you see something, say something, and then to take them seriously and to investigate them.
Shout out to News Nation for continuously covering this topic, and double shout out to them for bringing on somebody like Alex Dietrich with that kind of prestige. She's recently also been announced as an ambassador for Unhidden. And speaking of, Unhidden has announced another new ambassador, and it should be someone that you recognize. A tweet from May 7th says, Unhidden is pleased to announce the appointment of Jacques Vallée, the distinguished researcher, computer scientist, and venture capitalist. Unhidden is a charity that has been set up to support good mental health and reduce anxiety around exceptional experiences, as well as to encourage a better, kinder disclosure. Speaking about his involvement with Unhidden, Jacques Vallée said, quote, I know from my research that UAP sightings have a profound effect psychologically on the people involved. It is important that there is more research into both the effects and possible ways of mitigating them. Unhidden is helping to reduce stigma and raise the importance of proper care for the people affected by exceptional experiences. I am pleased to be supporting Unhidden as an ambassador, end quote. Shout out to Jacques Vallée for doing the damn thing. Not only is he an ambassador for Unhidden, but if you didn't know, he's also on the Soul Foundation as well. I love the work that he does. I think he makes a lot of really huge contributions to ufology, and he's definitely someone to pay attention to. And last but not least, the upcoming SCU conference. The SCU, or the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, it's hosting their 5th annual conference called AAPC, or Anomalous Aerospace Phenomena Conference, that will take place in Huntsville, Alabama from May 31st to June 2nd, 2024. In this next clip, we'll hear from the founding member and executive board director of SCU, Robert Powell, and hear what he has to say about this upcoming event. Then we'll take a look at their website together and see who will be presenting.
My name is Robert Powell, and I am a founding member of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, normally called SCU. I hope that this year you will join us at our 5th conference on UAP. Whether you join us physically at the conference in Huntsville, Alabama, or whether you join us virtually through our system, you will meet a lot of interesting people, whether online or in person, and I think you will also hear some very interesting scientific presentations. I will be talking on the reported shape, size, kinematics, electromagnetic effects, and presence of sound of UAP from select reports from 1947 to 2016. I will talk about some interesting characteristics, both in shape and other factors such as EM effects. Our conference this year is looking at the subject of what should be the roles of government, academia, and the scientific community in the study of UAP. The military has been looking into the UAP subject for 75 years, and we've made no success. It's time for a change. I believe the change we need, and this is my personal view, is that large sums of money need to be allocated by Congress for academia and the scientific community to study this subject in an open arena that is open both to the public and all of society. I hope you come and join us and hear what we have to say.
All right, so here is the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies website. It says 2024 Anomalous Aerospace Phenomena Conference, Bridging the Gap, bringing scientists, government, and academia together to better understand UAP. This event is going to be taking place in Huntsville, Alabama, and it is going to be happening from May 31st to June 2nd, 2024. And let's just scroll down here to look at who the presenters are going to be. Check it out. We got good old Ross Coulthart. Recognize that name. Kevin Knuth. Recognize that name. Beatrice Villarroel. Recognize her from the Seoul Conference. And then down here we have the board directors and member. And this is the guy we just saw in the video just a second ago. So if you want to check this website out, it is explorescu.org. I think it's awesome that Ross Coulthart is going to be here. I think it's awesome that Kevin Knuth is going to be there. I think it's awesome that Beatrice is going to be there. I just really like to see big name people like this participating in these kinds of conferences. Beatrice, just like Jacques, are on the Seoul Foundation. Ross Coulthart is killing it with the UFO journalism. And he does his show with Bryce Zabel, Need to Know. And he does his own show on News Nation called The Reality Check. And if you don't know Kevin Knuth, he is a scientist who's deeply involved in UFO and this topic. So very cool conference coming up. And if you would like to attend, or if you would just like to check out more information about it, their website is in the video description box below, so make sure to check that out. And that concludes this week's UAP Society's weekly UAP and UFO news show. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, and while you're here, do us a favor, smash that like button, click subscribe, ring the little notification bell, drop a lovely comment down below, and share this video with your family and friends to help us spread the good word. Let's raise the collective consciousness together in unity. All right, UA peeps, much love, peace, and namaste.